Howdy! Welcome to the Gateway to the Smokies podcast. This podcast is about America's most visited national park, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and the surrounding towns. This area is filled with ancient natural beauty, a deep storied history, and rich mountain cultures that we explore with weekly episodes. I'm Joseph Franklin McElroy, a man of the world, but also with deep roots in these mountains. My family has lived in the Great Smokies for over 200 years. My business is in travel, but my heart is in culture. Today, we're going to talk about songs in the Cataloochee Valley, about the Cataloochee Valley by Richard Hurley. But first, let's talk about our sponsors. Imagine a place evocative of motor courts of the past, yet modern and vibrant with a chic Appalachian feel. A place for adventure and for relaxation. Imagine a place where you can fish in a mountain heritage trout stream, grill the catch on fire, and eat accompanied by fine wine or craft beers. Imagine a place with old-time music and world cultural sounds. There is no other place like the Meadowlark Motel in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. Your Smoky Mountain adventures start with where you stay. Another sponsor is smokiesadventure.com. That's Smokies plural, adventure singular. The Smoky Mountains and surrounding areas is a vacation destination for all seasons. Some of the nation's best hiking trails, waterfalls, outdoor adventures, and family entertainment can be found right here. Start your adventure by using smokiesadventure.com to explore all the wonderful features of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, trails, waterfalls, Cades Cove, and more. Then check out all the awesome family attractions and entertainment you and your entire family can enjoy. And if you're looking to have a life event somewhere, like a wedding or a honeymoon, then we got you covered there. Go to smokiesadventure.com. It's one of the leading information portals for adventures and experiences in the Great Smokies. So welcome. You can see we're sitting in the basement of the Meadowlark Motel at the Speakeasy, where we have an underground speakeasy. And we're going to have some upcoming events at the Meadowlark I'm going to tell you about. On July 9th, we're having a wild crafting in Mother Nature's Natural Garden program with the legendary Isla Hatter. It starts on Saturday, July 9th at 10 a.m. with a program featuring the Isla, who is a wild crafting expert, renowned author, filmmaker, instructor, and tour guide for the Great Smoky Mountain National Park's elite field school educational programs. She's an expert on edible plants, medicinal herbs, and anything pertaining to wildcraft foraging and Appalachian plants, trees, and flowers. She's been featured a lot on television, videos, and books, and has worked as advisor for multiple movies and television shows. She is an iconic female of Smoky, soon to be featured in one of our name-themed rooms. She will be presenting her beloved program, Mother Nature's Natural Garden, and then leading a short tour of the grounds to identify nature's bounty that can be found in our own backyards. And then there'll be a free barbecue supper and music by Mike Ogletree and some friends afterwards. The event is $20 per person for non-guests, and it's free for motel guests and Heritage Club members. Now, a big event coming for those of you who want to learn how to write songs is August 12th through 13th. We're having a songwriters camp and a concert with Grammy-winning artists Jim Lauderdale and Charles Humphrey III, along with award-winning artists Darren Nicholson, Clay Mills, and Charles Chamberlain. You won't get an opportunity like this very often in your life if you're wanting to really write songs and hang out with Grammy award-winning artists. It's a 2-day event of interactive songwriting instruction with world-class musicians, and a demo tape will be produced for each participant. And then there'll be a concert by the Songs from the Road Band on Friday night, and then a barbecue and all-star concert on Saturday night. This is a unique event. No other place. There's nothing else like it, and the space will be limited to make sure that every participant gets individual attention. The price is $675 per person. It includes all activities, the demo tape, the concerts, and the dinner, and everything else. And there's special room packages available for those who want to stay overnight at the Meadowlark Motel. So call 828-926-1717 for details and to reserve your space and to reserve a room. Again, 828-926-1717 to get your place. There's also limited tickets available just for the concerts, and you can get those as well. Today, I have a great guest. His name is Richard Hurley. He's a Canton native and a UNC graduate. I won't hold against him.
Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate that.
And he's a veteran of the U.S. Navy.
My dear friend.
Yeah. He's a former radio DJ and renowned award-winning songwriter and musician. He is active in community work and service and is serving on various boards and as an MC for Folkmoot, Shindig on the Green, the Mountain Dance and Folk Festival, and the Bascom Lamar Lunsford Festival, while also promoting area music events, along with his own musical projects, which we'll talk about, Cataloochee and My Mountains, My Songs. He resides in Asheville, North Carolina, my new hometown. So let's jump in with something exciting. You were a DJ on WPTL in Canton, and you spent about 17 years there. Tell us about that.
Actually, the station opened in August of 1963. There was already one station there that started in 1954, and a guy named Ed Presley wanted to have a country station because there was no country station in Canton. So he opened WPTL in August of 63. Well, they wanted to have a high school kid that could bring in the high school audience. So I got the gig. So I got to be a high school disc jockey. And that's back when Louie Louie first came out and some of those songs back in the dark ages. But I worked there during college and before I went in the service in 1970. So I was there off and on and had a great time and learned a lot and got to play a lot of old country music at that time, some gospel music, rock music, easy listening music, played a little bit of all of it. But it was quite a fun time in my early career, yes. And
was that did that help you in your career and defining your experiences or your performance ability to do performance?
Yeah, it did. It led me into doing some MC gigs, which I carried on to this day doing MC stuff. So yeah, it was helpful in that regard, and having to work there with a lot of the people that came through that world, you kind of pick up something from everybody you're exposed to in the music business like that. So yeah, it was quite helpful. And then when I started doing shows later on in the 80s, a lot of these old records I'd played back in the 60s were songs I learned back then. Of course, I was influenced by a lot of those artists and the Kingston Trio and some of the folk area, hit in 1958. When the Kingston Trio came out with Tom Dooley, that just changed the world because that
oh my
song,
God, I love that song to this day.
It made the country, it made all the charts. So that is kind of what got me started in playing. And my folks got me a ukulele when I was about 12, and I learned to play that. And then I bought a $10 K guitar from a buddy of mine, and that's kind of how I got to start making music. So
and you started playing on the radio. Some early on too, right?
Played a little bit. I had written a song about the old Smathers Market there in Canton.
Oh, I just had Smathers on the Smathers, the son.
Yeah,
here on the show.
This would have been his granddaddy.
Yeah,
Ranzo and Underwood Smathers had the grocery store back then, and I wrote a song called Underwood. It was like Underwood, Underwood, don't you wish you could.
Yeah.
Anyway, my brothers and I used to play some together. We played at the Canton's first tomato festival at the the new old Y, which is long gone now. But I recorded that just to, 8-track tape back then, got a little exposure. So people called us and said, "Can you play that song?" It wasn't really a record. But yeah, those were all good experiences.
Did you play gospel too?
I played gospel on the air. Yeah, I sure did. We had a program called the Gospel Caravan, which was like 11 to 12. But I used to come in at 9. It was called Country Star Time. And a guy named Jimmy Haney, who was a big influence on me early on. Jimmy Haney was a local musician. He's been gone a number of years, but he was an award-winning folk singer. In fact, he was the national folk singing champion. I think it was 1950 or thereabouts, and a big influence on me because he used to come to the grammar schools and play programs. And I said, wow, I got to do that one of these days. So that was kind of the start of it. Jimmy used to sign on at 6 and go to 9. I went 9 to 11 with country music, then 11 to 12 with gospel, and then I'd come back at 2 and go 2 to 3:30 with the country music, and then I'd go to easy listening music 3:30 to sign off. So but in high school, the rock show was like 3:30 to 6:30 or something like that.
You
Great experience.
I asked about the gospel. One of the I've traveled a bit, and one of the most popular brunches I ever saw was actually in Barbados.
Yeah.
And they had a gospel brunch, right? They would have brunch and they would have good old gospel music,
man.
right?
Yeah.
And people loved that. I was thinking that would probably go well here too.
Yeah, probably would.
Right.
Yeah, gospel music has certainly been popular in the South for years and years.
Yeah.
We used to play a lot of the old groups, the old Florida Boys and the old Kingsmen, the local group, and people like that. Number of those great, and there were some local people who were big in the gospel music that did quite well. Francis Blaylock Benton was a local lady that had some big hits from here in Haywood County back in the 60s there. So we used to play a lot of that.
Well, how did you learn to play?
I got a Mel Bay 50-cent book that shows you the 3 chords, C, F, and G, and the other progressions. And I just kind of picked it up. But I was so naive. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I'm going to tell you, I was so naive because I didn't have other, buddies that played, and my parents were into it. I didn't realize you had to change strings. Okay, once, what does it matter? You get a string, the string. I didn't even know that, but I learned later on. But anyway, that's how I learned.
Did you almost entirely learn on your own, or did you have some mentors or anything?
Learned on my own. And then I bought a Gibson, little LG1 Gibson, the probably 50s model for about, I think I paid $25 for it from a buddy of mine. Then eventually I got a nice Martin guitar years and years later, but then I've got a collection of guitars now.
Yeah.
That's the way it started.
That's pretty cool. So you went off to you were high school, and then you went off to UNC first, or did you go to the Navy first?
Went to UNC.
You went to UNC first.
Yeah, I started out at UNC. I'll tell people it was back when the Tar Heels were still playing in Woolman Gym. That was before the Dean Dome, and that was before Carmichael, of course. But they were playing in Woolman Gym. Billy Cunningham was a senior when I was a freshman.
Right.
So that's how I got started. But when I would come home for school breaks, I would go back to the station and do vacation relief, stuff like that. And I worked at Camp Hope. Then I worked at the mill, the Canton Mill, one summer, 67, which was a great experience.
The paper mill. Paper towel.
That helped me with my career later on when I got into the industry and square D company.
So then after UNC, you went into the Navy?
Yeah. Because it was during the NOM era.
Right.
I went out and had one job interview, and they said, come see us when you're through with the service, because nobody would hire you till you got the service.
Right, yeah.
So I ended up going into a program that required drilling for a year, and then I went in on active duty for 2 years, and then that had another 3-year obligation. But I was fortunate. I was on the USS Wasp, which is an aircraft carrier, and we were in the North Atlantic up there doing maneuvers. But I had the privilege to work with JFK's personal naval aide. So that was quite an experience. I learned a lot from those guys. And all those experiences help you later in life. It helped me when I got into my career.
Cool.
And that was also the start of some of my songwriting.
Is in the Navy? In
the Navy, because a guy named Admiral Zumwalt was Chief of Naval Operations back then, and he was loosening up the Navy and letting us guys wear our hair long.
Okay.
So he would come out with these Z-grams, for Zumwalt, Z-grams. And so I wrote a song called The Ballad of the Z-Gram. Well, the Admiral heard about it, and he called me into his stateroom, and I borrowed a guitar and went there and played it for him. He wanted to send it to Zumwalt. So I recorded on little 4 cassettes.
Yeah.
Little
reel.
Yeah, little 3-inch reel, and recorded. He sends it to Zumwalt, and a month or so later, I get this letter, 4-star stationary letter there. Me, little enlisted guy, says, dear Petty Officer Hurley, thank you so much for your song about And he and I connected about 7 years later when he was out and I was out. He came to Asheville to debate nuclear armament with some retired general. And I walked up to him after his speech, and I said, enjoyed your speech. I said, you happen to remember a sailor that wrote a song about you? And he said, yeah. I said, I'm that sailor. He thought he just met Johnny Cash.
Well, cool. Well, we have to take a break now.
Sure.
So then we'll come back. We'll talk more about your career in business and then in music.
Thank you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my very special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Howdy, this is Joseph Franklin McElroy, back with the Gateway to the Smokies podcast and my guest, Richard Hurley. So, Richard, after the Navy, you had a long career as an HR manager for Square D. How'd that happen?
Square D Company. Well, I just got real lucky because I'd come home about 3 months before I was supposed to get out of the service and put in an application. And I had a cousin that worked over there, and he put in a good word for me. And I went in as, at that time, they called it personnel supervisor. It was like back when it was personnel manager. Personnel was the word. I started out in the second seat and moved up about 4 years later, I guess, to the first seat. And by my own volition, I wanted to stay in Asheville.
Yeah.
So I thought at the time too I might have to move, but it worked out. It was a great company. They treated us well, and it was a very giving company, very caring company. And the company did a lot of United Way and gave a lot of bucks to the community and various organizations out there. So I had just a wonderful career.
Cool. Did you get to play music while you were in that career?
Not in that role in particular. I mean, I was out playing places after I did a record in 1981 called The Ballad of Old Fort Mountain.
Yeah, I remember that record. Yeah.
Do you really?
I do. I remember for some reason. It
was a 45, and the legendary greatest of all banjo player Raymond Fairchild played on it. Raymond and I go back way back.
Yeah.
The guy named Arnold Freeman, who's gone now also, and then the Crow Brothers, who were popular. They used to tour with Raymond. They used to play with Raymond. So I'd written this song about Old Fort Mountain. I was singing at parties, and people said, "You ought to record that." I said, "I waste time." And then one day I said, "Well, I'm not going to turn around 10 years from now and say what if." So I just called up Raymond and said, "Would you help me?" And he said, "Sure, I'd be glad to." So we got together. It happened to be August the 12th of 81, but I've been coached now. When you go to that studio, do your rehearsing before you go in there, because that's money.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I said, "Raymond, don't worry, Rich, we'll be all right." I said, "Arnold, call Arnold. When can we break? Don't worry about it." And I'm sweating bullets. We walked in that studio, and Eddie Swan, the guy I work with now, on the studio, and they set up like 3 mics back in those days. Now it's recording a whole different ballgame. They set up like 3 mics, and I kicked it off a little guitar run, and they jumped in this music that was just fabulous. I mean, they just made that song. So it was 45 RPM. So we took it to PTL, of course, WWNC, and WW. Well, they all started playing it, and it caught on.
Yeah.
So I sold them through Ingles Markets. I don't know. I pressed a couple of thousand and probably sold. I gave away a few hundred, but it kind
I
of.
saw him around here when I was a kid.
Yeah,
And
it
I
was-
also, was looking, well, I don't know, a while back, I was looking up what Raymond Fairchild, and that record came up
Yep.
with him being on it. Yeah.
Yeah, he was something else, but he helped me out with that, and it's on my first album. All the songs on my 2 albums are songs I've written,
Mhm.
and the first album, My Mountains, My Songs, I put that on there as a bonus track. All the other tracks are things that we recorded since then.
Cool. Yeah, Bob Plott, is GM of the Mid-Lark Smoky Mountain Center and
Yeah,
Heritage Center, and he also helps put together, some of the information and
Yeah.
questions. And he mentioned that you mentioned one of them already, Raymond Fairchild, and the other big musical influence was Jimmy Haney.
yeah.
Right.
I mentioned Jimmy a little bit earlier. That we'd worked together as disc jockeys, and that he was, like I say, when I was in grammar school, he would come around to the schools and play.
Mhm.
But Raymond, here's a story about Raymond. When Raymond was before he became Raymond Fairchild, famous like he was,
Right.
he was working around these parts, and he had done a record. He had done his first record, an old Simmons record it was. And my brother came home with that record, and I listened to that. And I said, man, this is just different. It was like a snake charmer.
Mhm.
He had a way of playing songs that just drew me in. So I got to meet him, met him a time or two up in the valley. He'd give me copies of his records, and I would play them on my program.
Mhm.
And then occasionally he and another guy would be having breakfast down at one of the restaurants in Canton. I'd invite them up and I'd put them on the show, and they'd play for 20 minutes or so. So that was how my friendship with Raymond started way back when. But he was really something else. And then when he went to the debut of the Grand Ole Opry in '78, he invited me to go with him. In essence, I went down to Atlanta, picked up my brother, and already about 4 of us went over to Nashville, and we got to go backstage and all that. Bill Monroe bought us hot dogs. That was true. So anyway, we go out there, and Raymond walked out there and started playing, and they had never heard anything like that. And he got encores and standing ovations.
Yeah.
Raymond Fairchild was
His fiddle playing was pretty,
genius.
right?
He was his Grace Banjo. I think Grace Banjo.
Banjo,
He could do it, but yeah. And then when he played here in the Valley, you remember the Maggie Valley Opry House?
Yeah.
He played there for years.
His name was on it. Yeah.
But every time I would go in, he and his wife Shirley had that business for a number of years before Raymond passed in October of 19, I think it was. Every time I'd go to one of the shows, he'd see me in the audience and he'd say, I want to introduce an old friend of mine. So, that's Richard Hurley. He used to play my records. So he played my records so much that they fired him. They said, son, there are more banjo players than just Raymond Fairchild out there.
Yeah.
Truth of the matter was, of course, I had to go to the service.
But he was the best one.
But that was a good story. He and I
You
shared.
you did his eulogy, right? Well, that must have been tough, right?
I did. I was asked to speak, and amongst some other people, but I was extremely flattered to be part of one of the speakers that spoke there.
Yeah.
That's up at the stomping ground up here in Maggie Valley. And part of my comments where I said, there's only one Elvis, there was only one Hank Williams, and there was only one Raymond Fairchild.
Oh yeah.
One of my many comments talking about what a great person. He was a good family man. He was a loving father and husband, and just a great guy. But he had a gift. He had a gift that few have. He had soul with the way he played that banjo.
I heard that he's I being from Maggie Valley, I knew of him, and I had seen him a couple of times, and I think my dad knew him.
Your dad knew him, I'm sure.
Did well, yeah.
Dad
Being
be
the mayor, and he had, but my understanding was he was a great friend, but he was also a little cantankerous.
Well, Raymond had his
especially
ways.
business, music,
He had his ways, but I'll tell you one thing is the Raymond was noted for, most people are not aware of, was if sometimes they'd have leaner audiences than others because whatever reason, traffic or whatever. If there was one person in that audience that bought a ticket, Raymond would go out and say that might as well be 500 or whatever. We're going to play them a good show. He'd go out there and he'd play a whole show for one person. He wouldn't go out there and say, I'm sorry, we're canceling. He said that person may have driven 500 miles to hear our show. We're going to play him the show.
That's great.
He was a very caring sort of guy.
Wow.
Very caring.
Yeah, he was one of a kind. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about your records a little bit. You got some real famous people on those records. But is there other famous people that you've worked with?
I've got some pretty heavy hitters on my albums.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. Yeah,
but they're people. The guy I work with is a guy named Eddie Swan.
Yeah,
and Regal Music, or Regal Media. It's regalmedia.net. It's his website. But he's been in the business about 50 years. He's recorded people like Vince Gill. He's recorded David Wilcox, Brian Sutton, the great Brian Sutton. He's recorded Squire Parsons, that great Beulah Land song that you've heard, that great gospel song. He recorded that, and he's worked with a lot of the greats. But anyway, I got to working with Eddie, and we put some albums together.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got some great ones, but before we get there, I do want to understand. You're a songwriter, right? And you did some great songs. I've read that. I was looking at. We listened to one, and I've seen some of the others.
Appreciate it.
And you play guitar, but do you play anything else?
I don't really. I tried to play. I took a few banjo lessons from Mark Pruitt. He's on one of my albums too. Mark and I are old friends from way back, but I never could quite get into the banjo, so I just play guitar.
But I heard you got the handmade washtub bass in some of your appearances. So what's that?
Everybody's probably seen, or at least I know you've probably seen the old washtub bass.
Oh, yeah.
Turn the bass over. Maybe folks haven't or not familiar. You just turn an old tub over, one of these big old wash tubs.
Right.
And the one I've got is over 70 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Thick ones.
Yeah.
And drill the hole in the middle of it, and you take an old broomstick and you just run a cord up, an old sash cord, and you put it on it, and you hold the stick down the edge of it, and you plunk it, and that gives you a bass.
And it gives it because of the tub. It gives it a
vibrancy.
Gives it vibrancy, right?
So my brothers and I played at this tomato festival years ago in Canton. So I carried it on as part of my act. And I tell people, I said, now don't worry. I get people to come from the audience and play the bass with me.
Yeah.
And then kids especially.
Oh, because they just go, yeah.
And that's a real fun part of my program.
Mm-hmm.
And I always preface it by saying, now don't worry, this tub is over 70 years old, and literally this stick and string have been on there since 1969.
Oh my gosh.
It's been broken a time or two. It's assured by Lloyd's, don't worry, it'll be okay. Yeah, that's a fun part of my show.
Well, I don't know if you ever walked down Waynesville Main Street. Yeah. Right. They have all sorts of sculptures on there.
Yeah.
One of the sculptures, there's a duo of musicians. They're 10 foot tall.
Oh yeah.
And one of them's playing a washtub bass. You've seen that? Yeah. So people, you definitely should make a pilgrimage there.
Yeah. And it's surprising. People don't realize what a sound that will make, and that's why people developed that years ago when they didn't have money to go out and buy things. It improvised, just like my good friend David Holt, who's on my album. David toured with Doc Watson for about 14 years, and David plays a number of different instruments on his show. When we're doing live shows, he'd play paper bag, he'd play spoons, he'd play bones, just whatever, to show the improvisation of music over the years, the development of music.
Oh, that's fine. Well, we have to take another break now. And when we come back, I want to talk about some of your albums.
Great.
All right.
I'm Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who will expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on talkradio.nyc.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law business law attorney and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Howdy, this is Joseph Franklin McElroy back with the Gateway to the Smokies podcast and my guest, Richard Hurley. So, Richard, you've got 2 albums out, right? So,
I have.
Can you tell me about your first project? It was what, My Mountains, My Songs?
Yeah, it was a little project called My Mountains, My Songs. And
I can hold it up to the camera
yeah,
for those people watching it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
We started out with the Old Fort song, which I mentioned I'd written back and recorded back in '81. I thought, well, okay, this is 2013. Just a few years later, I said, a body needs to cut a record every 30 years or so.
There you go, right? Yeah.
I think it's in my life.
You're cated, aren't you? Right? You're a musical cated.
There we go. So I need to do something. So I had written a bunch of songs over the years, and I just stick them back in the files and whatnot. So I decided to pull them out and see what we could do with them. So I called David Holt and said, David, I'm thinking about doing an album. What do you give me some recommendations? Well, you need to call Josh Goforth. Josh Goforth is a genius musician. He's from Madison County. He played on my album. He played the lead guitar, the rhythm guitar, the banjo, the bass, the mandolin, the fiddle, all of it, and wove it together.
Oh, wow.
So that's how this thing started. And we put there are 15 songs on here with the Old Fort song being a bonus track. One of the ones you were looking at the little award thing here that the North Carolina Society of Historians actually gave me a little award, the Paul Green Award, for the historical significance of the project. And there's a song on here about the Coal Mountain bomber crash.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people saw the Coal Mountain movie in the book, and it was written by Charles Fraser, who grew up in Franklin, who has connections back to my hometown of Canton. His mom was from there originally. Anyway, so the thing that most people don't realize is that on Friday the 13th, September of '46, a B-25 bomber was coming from Detroit to Tampa and crashed into the top of Coal Mountain, missed by about 150 feet. They called the tower at that time in Bristol, Tennessee, and said they wanted to go visual. So be careful because it's kind of nasty and rainy down there. Well, the next thing you know, wham, the youngest general in the Air Corps, 2 sergeants and 2 colonels. Now you can imagine what that was like for Crusoe and
Right. Oh my God, yeah.
So a lady named Doris Rollins Cannon, who's deceased now, she wrote a book about it. And back about, I guess it was in 2012, I saw this book in the Blue Ridge Books here in Waynesville. And I was looking, I said, man, I know some of these people. And I read the book, and I remembered hearing about it because as a kid, my late brother pointed over there in the mountain across from where I grew up and said, that glimmer over there, that's a plane crash. Well, okay, fine. My scoutmaster used to talk, okay, but he never took us on a hike up there. So I went up the mountain, couldn't find it, got any crash evidence, but it's all been picked over. But anyway, I wrote the song.
Yeah.
So I got Doris and a guy named, I'm having a memory thing here. A guy helped me out, Roy Moody, a guy named Roy Moody helped me out with it, just make sure my facts were accurate. So then we recorded that song, and Doris sent this thing to the North Carolina Historical Society, and they basically did the whole thing because I got some other historic, I got about the floods of '04 on here, and I've got some other songs similar to that.
And they gave you the historical North Carolina.
Yeah, I wasn't the only one. A lot of people get that, but it still was a nice.
Well, it's nice to get it. Yeah,
nice thing to have.
So it's not a participation prize. It's actually doing some work.
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference.
Oh, he hummed a tune. You got a participation award. No, you got a real song. You got a real, you did some real work. So you got a good thing.
So this one came out at 13, and Josh, his music's just fabulous. Of course, Eddie Schwan, the engineer, I mean, he knows what he's doing. Like I say, he's been doing this 50 years. So fast forward to 2021, I came out with this album. The lead song is Cataloochee.
Which is, music to my heart. Maggie Valley is close to Cataloochee and the Cataloochee Valley. We got the elk and everything else. So tell us the story of this one.
Well, the backstory is there's a guy named Steve Woody, he's a friend of mine, and he is a descendant of the old Woody family that lived back in Cataloochee. I ran to Steve one time there in Asheville. We've known each other for years. And I said, I understand you're having your big reunion coming up. They have it every year. I think it's second weekend in August. He said, yeah, why don't you come as my guest? I said, man, I'd love to do that because I've never been to the reunion. I've been to Cataloochee, of course. So I went to the reunion, and he kind of monitors a little church service there. And during the church service, he introduced some of the politicians. And then he introduced me, and he said, some of you may know Richard, Haywood boy writes songs. Said, I think he ought to write a song about Cataloochee. What do you all think?
So you were you were blackmailed into doing it.
So I wrote a song about Cataloochee. I went and did some research on it and I wrote the song, and then he asked me to come play it. So I went back and played it. That was in 18. In the August of 19, I played it live at the church service.
Oh, that's nice.
And I don't mean this to sound as a brag.
People were crying.
People got emotional.
I can imagine.
And
yeah.
I got emotional. I don't know which one of us got the teary eyes most. I got emotional standing there.
Mhm.
And I said, I'm going to have to record it. So we recorded, and we got us some different players on this. Some of the folks.
You got some great people on this album. Yeah, I mean, these are incredible.
Tim Surratt and Darren Nicholson, both with Balsham Range, are on there. Tony Creasman's a percussionist that works. He's kind of Willie Nelson's drummer, and he's worked with Glenn Campbell and Waylon, or not Waylon, but Merle Haggard and James Taylor, some of those guys. And then, of course, David Holt's on there. Bobby Hicks won a Grammy with Ricky Skaggs the same time that Mark Pruitt did, and Brian Sutton, another local boy. So he's a 10-time Grammy Award winner. So we were able to get him to help us out, thanks to my buddy Eddie. So we got some pretty heavy hitters. And I dedicated this album to my old friend Raymond Fairchild.
There you go.
But it's got the Cataloochee song, and it's got a number of other songs.
There's one song on there. You got the Legend of Boojum on there. This is this week's beer.
Right.
Is Boojum.
Yeah.
Can you give us a short version of what that is? What it is?
The Boojum is actually a story that goes back in, the legend goes back in the 1800s. And up at Lake Logan, which used to be owned by Champion Papers back in the old days, they had a little Boojum cave in there. And there's a big picture of the Boojum, which is now in the downtown tap room.
Right, yeah.
So Pat Smathers was the mayor of Canton. No, he's been the mayor of Canton. He called me up and said, we're going to do a festival about the Boojum. Why don't you come in and see it? And I said, cool. And I said, well, got to write a song about it. So we wrote and recorded a song called The Legend of the Boojum. And it's all about the history of the Boojum. 8 foot shaggy and 8 foot tall and shaggy, catch him if you can. Boojum, da, 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 da.
Was that a big thing in Canton? Where was it big at? Because I don't really remember.
It was in 2016.
That's where the legend came up.
Well, that's where I played the song. I wrote the song for that festival. It only had that 1 year. It didn't succeed or didn't happen after that. But anyway, the song did, and the song's on there. And there's a guy named David Johnson that plays about 20 different instruments. He's another local boy down the foot of the Old Fort somewhere, and plays everything. He did all the music on it, but it came out pretty well. And the interesting thing is that when I've given this to folks originally had it as a single, but kids get into this. Kids get into this Boojum song. I guess it's the sound of the name Boojum or whatever. But the story was that he had a penchant for two things. He liked to go. He would hide out in the bushes. He was having kind of his version of Bigfoot.
Right. Yeah.
So he'd hide out in the weeds there, and he'd see the girls down there dipping in the pools. And then his other thing was he liked to go out and find all these precious stones. And he had a cave. And he'd go take them to that cave and store them in old liquor jugs and fill them up with moonshine.
Right.
So those were his two things. So one day he's out in there, and this young girl's she's in the pool there swimming. She sees the Boojum, and their eyes lock, and they fall in love. And they get married, and they go back to the mountains. But he still had to go out and look for all these precious stones. So she would get out. She'd get lonely, and she'd holler for him, and he'd holler back, and they'd holler till they came together. And her name was Annie. Okay. Therefore came the word Hootenanny. That's part of the legend.
Really? Hootenanny. Oh, she's a hooter.
So that's all in the song. The Legend of the Boojum.
Wow. Well, That's well. Cheers to Boojum. I'm
Yeah.
drinking Boojum, talking about Boojum. We're
That's
going to
good.
listen to Boojum.
That's good. Well, I hope we give it a listen.
Oh, I'm going to. Yeah. What is some of the other favorite songs in this
Well,
album?
one other thing is when I think about the legend of Boojum, when I think about some of the historic stuff, is Bascom Lamar Lunsford. Do you know that name? He was the minstrel of the Appalachians. He was born on the campus of what's now Mars Hill University, and he started our Mountain Dance and Folk Festival in 1928 in Asheville, in the Madison County, Asheville area. It's the longest running folk festival in America.
Oh wow!
In America.
And you've been on the board of that too, right?
Well, I'm on the advisory board, but I play there and MC there.
Yeah.
But I've been involved with it for years and years. But Pete Seeger came down to learn about the banjo from Bascom Lamar Lunsford. And Pete Seeger, many of the fans will know, that the music fans will know, he had that long neck banjo.
Right. Yeah.
The story was he got that from Bascom.
Oh wow!
So I've got a tribute to Bascom here on my album. But
and what other songs are there on there?
well, I've got one on this latest one about, I call it God's Special Children, and it's about special needs kids.
Oh wow! Okay.
And I was doing some volunteer work at Irene Wortham Center over in Asheville, which helps special needs kids. And a lady I'd worked with came in there and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I've been a volunteer." "What are you doing here?" She said, "I can't pick up my son." Now, this was years after we'd both retired. And I flashed back and remembered she had a son named Alan, who was a special needs kid. And I met him, and the next morning was Christmas Eve. And I woke up and I wrote this song called God's Special Children. And I remember as a kid, my mom used to say, and she lived to be around 101, she used to say, if you'd see a special needs child, she said, "Well, son, those are just God's special children." Well, that just made everything fine.
That made everything fine. Oh, that's
so
nice.
So we did God's Special Children. And it really, Eddie, my producer, was able to pull in a lady that sang with me on that and harmonized it. It really came out pretty well. And then I felt, and we've got just a number of other things. I've got one called The Leaning Side. I've got one about Collins guitars. I've got one about my uncle Hoss Burnett. He was a great storyteller and fox hunter. Now, talking about Bob and his plot hounds, that's the state dog, as we all know. But fox hunting, not fox hunting.
Right.
Fox hunting was a big thing back
My
then.
grandpa was a big fox.
Was he?
He loved the Walker Hounds.
Well,
not
the Walker Hounds.
The Walker Hounds.
Well, I guarantee they would have known each other.
Yeah. Okay.
Uncle Albert was a big fox hunter. So I'd written a song about him back in the 70s, and I pulled it out of my files and we revised it. And David Holt plays the washboard on it. And this David Johnson did some of the music. I said, we need some dog barks on this song. He said, "Well, why don't you do them?" I said, "I can't do that. Dave, why don't you do?" And he put dog barks with it. So he's like, "Going on the mountain, gotta go darn it, gotta go hunting, because he's Hoss Burning." And then you woo, woo, woo.
So who let the dogs out?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of local flavor there. Little local flavor.
Well, we're going to have to take another break here and come back. We'll finish up with some of the other things that you do and how people can get the CDs.
Great.
All right.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Howdy, this is Joseph Franklin McElroy back with the Gateway to the Smokies podcast and my guest, Richard Hurley. So Richard,
Yes.
you were born and raised in Canton, but now you live in Asheville most of your life. So
Yeah.
why'd you stick in Asheville for?
Well, I just love the mountains. Just like your intro when you were talking about your hotel and the Great Smoky Mountains and the fishing and the stream, all those things you talked about just made me realize how fortunate I am to have been able to stay here in Asheville, or in Western North Carolina.
Western North Carolina.
And, you know, a lot of volunteer activities I'm involved with take me all across Western North Carolina. But I thought there was a time or two during my career I was going to have to leave and move to another location or leave the company and do something else. And I was blessed and lucky that I didn't have to leave.
And how do you like how Asheville's grown?
Oh, it's changed. It's grown a lot, and it's become an interesting place. That's for sure.
Well, it's now sort of a music city, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of, the buskers on every corner, it seems like. But we have a couple of events downtown, like the Shindig on the Green, which I've also got a song about on my first album. We have Shindig on the Green in front of the courthouse there on Saturday nights.
Yeah.
It's 7 Saturday nights during the summer. In fact, it'll start this coming Saturday, 7 to 10 freebie.
Right.
People bring the lawn chairs and the blankets and spread out there, and they sit for 3 hours. And we have all these musicians that come in.
Wow.
Some of them come in from deep in the hollers, and some come from wherever, square dance teams and all that. And a lot of the greats like Mark Pruitt and Brian Sutton, the hottest guitar player in Nashville, I think, is #1 call guy over there in the studios. He's cut his teeth there. David Holtz played. Tons of big names played on the Shindig on the Green stage.
Wow. Well, I mean, no, you've been involved with a lot of those different festivals. You were involved with Belshare, right?
I wrote a song about Belshare.
I know. I saw that, and I was wondering what happened to Belshare.
It just finally ran its course.
Really?
It started in 1979.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what year it folded, but it was a great festival. I mean, how many times do you walk down the street of Main Street drinking a beer and eating a hot dog or whatever, and all this great entertainment?
Oh my gosh, I miss it. Yeah.
Doc, and used to have Skaggs and a lot of the big names. In fact, I mentioned a number of them in my song.
Really? Yeah.
So
cool. So I give people the flavor of what that was. It was a special sort of festival. Yeah.
Folks got together back in '79 to have a street party. Well, it sounded mighty fine. Right. They wanted something different, nothing normal kind of fair. They got themselves together, and started Belshare. Belshare means it's a beautiful life. Gather up the kids, your granny, and your wife. Put your feet on the street when the sun goes down. Music in the air in Asheville town.
There you go.
That's the chorus. But anyway.
Well, you've been involved with a number. What other are your favorite festivals?
Well, those are pretty much it. I used to try to go see Doc every time he would come around. I never played. I played on a singing show with him one day out at the Lunsford Festival out in Mars Hill. That's another big festival, the Bascom Lamar Lunsford. It was the only festival that he would let use his name. And it started, I think, somewhere back in the 60s. Bascom passed on in the 70s, but it was at Mars Hill, and they would bring in a lot of the old talent from back in Madison County is another mecca for musicians. So that's a great festival. But I never got to play on the stage with him. I'm not in that league, but I did chat with him some backstage a few times on some of these programs. But the Mountain Dance and Folk Festival, again, it's the granddaddy of all folk festivals. So
that's the one.
Yeah.
How about venues? What venues do you like in the Western North Carolina?
Well, I like to go to some of the things that happen at the Civic Center and some of the programs that happen there. And Lake Juneau, I like to go see Baltimore Range. I've introduced those guys a ton of times. And of course, my friend Eddie has worked with those guys too in the studio, and he's worked with the Steep Canyon Ranger boys and all that. But in these venues that, like your Maggie Valley Festival grounds here, I've gone to some programs there, and I played there actually one time. But I don't really promote myself as much as I should. But I do a fair amount of volunteer work. I go to some assisted living venues, places like that. And people call me, and I'll go do a program. They'll say, can you come do a pool party, that's not my venue. My venue's got to be, it's a concert. You got to pretty much listen to the lyrics.
Yeah.
Or it just won't work as well.
So if somebody's coming to Western North Carolina, Asheville, Hurley County, what are some things they shouldn't miss?
Shindig on the Green, they should not miss that.
All right.
So that's every Saturday night. Not every Saturday night. We break for the Mountain Dance Folk Festival. We'll start the 25th. It's always the first weekend around the 4th of July, and that's the 25th of June this time. And then we have another one to start the 2nd on through. We break for I think it's the 6th of August. Bascom always said our folk festival is always the first weekend long about sundown in August. And when I'm emceeing, I always say, okay, for you folks who wear a watch, that means 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, that's a must see there.
Yeah.
And of course, when Bell Share was going, that was a must
That was
see.
the one. Oh yeah.
But there are a lot of venues out there that I probably need to get around and go visit some, but I haven't visited all that many of them.
I like the Orange Peel myself.
Yeah, I did the Orange Peel.
Yeah.
I did my Bell Share song there when a buddy of mine was chairing Bell Share and asked me to come play it. So we did that to kind of kick it off. But,
I just saw Lyle Lovett, I think, in New York City.
Oh yeah,
City Winery, but he was also at the Orange Peel too. This is a great show. Yeah,
he plays a Collings guitar. That's a brand of guitar, and I played got a Collings too that this Martin's, but I've got a song there called the Collings Guitar Song.
Oh really? Do you have a? You said you have a collection of guitars,
I've
right?
got a few, yeah.
Yeah. You
like my buddies say, you can't have too many guitars. But I wrote this song about the Collings guitar.
That's your favorite?
Yeah, it's like they handed me my severance pay after 34 good years. I said goodbye to friends of mine, even shed some tears. We'll spend it all on this new windfall on a boat or a hot rod car. No, I don't think so, because I'd rather have a Collings made guitar. So that's the kickoff to it.
I spent many years making money and I decided to buy a motel.
That was a better investment than guitars.
Yeah, well, it was also, I did at the time I bought it because of, being the homestead and vague ideas of, doing things with it. Now it's become something else. But
I did get to touch Tony Rice's guitar one time.
Did you? All right.
Got to reach over and touch it one time.
Well, how do people buy your albums?
Well, my website, and I would hope people might go take a look at the website. It's Richard Hurley, Hurley, richardhurleymusic.com. And the various tabs, if they work through the tabs, it mentions places to purchase them. And also my 2 videos are on there. The video about Cataloochee, because after we did the song.
With all the beautiful pictures.
Yeah, pulled all these old pictures from 1800s out, and my producer and I put together a video. There's a video about the Shindig on the Green. Locally, Blue Ridge Books here in Waynesville, Strange for Music's got my album. In Canton, you got the Pigeon River Mercantile, and Maddie's, Asheville, you got the Chamber of Commerce over there. But yeah, richardhurleymusic.com can lead you to these various places.
And you have Facebook or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook.
Yeah. So they can look you up there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for.
Well, this has been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. And it's just it's fun to come up with when a song strikes you and something happens that makes you want to write a song. It just feels good when you get it done and get it recorded. But you've got a great show here, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, it's nice talking about the Smokies and the culture and everything around here. You let her in now. It's my daughter just walked in.
Well, hey there.
This is the Gateway to the Smokies podcast. There. Come on, you want to be on the show? Here, my daughter's on the show. Hey. This is the Gateway to the Smokies podcast. You can find out more about us at facebook.com/Gateway to the Smokies podcast. And we're on the talkradio.nyc network, which is a live podcast network with lots of everyday live podcasts that ranging from small business to travel to self-help to any number of things. So it's a really good network. And if you like listening to podcasts, I would recommend you take a listen to some of the other shows on this network. I actually have another podcast on this network called Wise Content Creates Wealth, where we talk about, using modern content marketing practices and AI to help your business. So, and that's on Fridays from noon until 1. So I appreciate if that's an interest here, to look us up. But this podcast is every Tuesday from 6 until 7. We talk about the Smoky Mountains and Hayward County and Asheville and Tennessee even, and things to do and things to enjoy and the culture and the people that are here. So take a look us up and come back again. Thank you.